Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Big Ghosts Don't Cry by Danielle Garrett, narrated by Amanda Ronconi. Introduction. Fresh off my Voodoo-tastic vacation to New Orleans, I find myself presented with the first test of my newly discovered magic. There's been a murder in the neighboring town of Pine Shoals, and the victim has decided she's not cut out for the spectral life and needs a gentle push into the Otherworld. As it turns out, conjuring some magic and telling a ghost to go towards the light isn't quite good enough. And now the hysterical ghost is stuck in some kind of limbo land. It's up to me to solve her murder before the poor ghost goes insane, or becomes demon food, whichever happens first. Reapers, creepers. Chapter 1. When you're a ghost whisperer, friends don't expect you to bring wine or a decorative candle to their housewarming party. Instead, they expect you to come prepared with a stockpile of sage, a 5-pound bag of salt, and an iron poker. They will happily feed you appetizers in exchange for a thorough paranormal inspection and the subsequent exorcism of any wandering spirits. Hey, it beats being asked to lug boxes around on moving day. So, when my boyfriend, Lucas, invited me to come see his swanky new condo in downtown Seattle, I packed accordingly. He'd been moved in for a little over a week, but I hadn't yet been able to make a getaway to see it in person. Seattle was a 3-hour drive from Beechwood Harbor and required a little bit of planning, considering I owned and operated a flower shop. "I came bearing gifts," I announced, handing him the bag of salt when he opened the front door. Laughing, he took it from me. "I thought you were kidding about this." "I like to come prepared," I teased. "Aren't you curious to see if you have any invisible roommates?" He mulled it over as he opened the door and ushered me into the condo. The unit was in a swanky, high-end building with spectacular views of the city and waterfront. The corporate rental was only meant to be Lucas's temporary digs until he could find his own permanent residence in the city. In the meantime, it was good to enjoy the high life. "This view is ridiculous," I exclaimed, stopping in front of the wall of ceiling-to-floor windows. In keeping with the condo's minimalistic theme, there weren't any window treatments. Nothing but sparkling skyline, glittering under the hazy moon. "I'm not missing the 2-star motels the studio used to put me up in, that's for sure," Lucas replied, crossing the room to stand beside me. He smiled at me and then looked out the window. "I've been to Seattle several times, but it looks different somehow." "Like home?" I ventured. He looped an arm around my waist, drawing me closer. "It's starting to feel that way," he said, giving me a meaningful look. "Oh, speaking of, I come bearing gifts," I said, reaching into the canvas bag slung across my chest. I pulled a gallon-sized glass jug out and presented it to Lucas. "A growler of that beer you like at McNally's." With a wiggle of his brow, he took the large bottle. "Now it's a party." "And my shoulder is celebrating," I teased. "Between the bag of salt and the growler, I got a mini workout in. Thank goodness this place has an elevator, or you'd have had to rescue me from the stairwell." Lucas laughed as he carried the growler to the kitchen. "You want some of this now?" I shook my head, wandering around the large living room as he stepped out of sight. "I'll get something at dinner." "I think we have just enough time for a tour before we go," he said, closing the fridge. He spread his arms out as he rounded the marble-topped island and rejoined me in the living room. "First impressions? Besides the view. What do you think of the place?" "I think it's—" Before I could answer, a trio of voices somewhere over my left shoulder all burst in with their opinions, and I cringed. "I think it's wonderful," Gwen gushed, floating a couple feet off the floor. "Scarlett, did you see 2 sinks in the bathroom? You could move right in." "It's all fun and games until the elevator goes out and you're stuck walking up 14 flights of stairs," Flapjack, my deceased Himalayan cat, added. "Not to mention the musty smell in the closet. I think someone must have kept a dead body in there. Or maybe it's still there. You know, behind the drywall." "Ew, Flapjack," Gwen snapped. "Don't be morbid." "Quite distasteful, Flapjack," Hayward Kensington III chimed in. His Oxford accent emphasized his distaste of the grumpy cat's commentary. Across the living room, Lucas's smile faltered. Is it that bad? I mean, it's a little cold, and the art isn't really my taste, but... I laughed and took a step toward him. No, it's not the art. I like it. Then why the hesitation? He paused, one brow lifted. They're here, aren't they? My nose wrinkled. Maybe? Scar? He threw his head back, pleading with the ceiling. I thought we'd marked this as a one-on-one kind of thing, he said, then glanced past me and quickly added, No offense to any of you, of course. Flapjack scoffed. The only thing I find offensive is the amount of hair products he keeps in that musty bathroom. Gwen giggled. He clearly knows what he's doing with all of it, though I'd be willing to bet he looks just as good first thing in the morning. Tousled hair, pajama bottoms, no shirt. Beside her, Hayward cleared his throat, loudly. I sighed. They wanted to come see the city, and so I kinda offered to let them tag along, I said, ignoring the paranormal peanut gallery. They're not staying, I promise. Swiveling around, I shot Flapjack a meaningful glance. In fact, I think they were just leaving now that they've seen the place. Mm-hmm. Lucas didn't look convinced. I made an overly dramatic shooing gesture at the ghostly trio. Go on, see the sights, breathe in the smells. Pike's Market, here I come, Flapjack said with glee. That's where they throw the fish, he informed Hayward and Gwen. I cringed. The fish market was likely already closed, but I wasn't going to be the one to tell him. We should be taking our leave as well, Hayward said, holding his arm out for Gwen. We're having dinner aboard a cruise ship this evening. And by having dinner, he means watching other people eat while eavesdropping on their conversations. Gwen explained in a conspiratorial whisper as if Lucas might overhear her, which, strictly speaking, wasn't possible. Enjoy! See you in the morning. Not a minute before 10:30. I called after the three ghosts as they floated back out the front door. I'm putting up a salt ring just in case. You'd think a simple do not disturb sign would do the trick, Lucas said, coming to join me. Oh, to live in such a world, I said, laughing. He kissed me, and I tasted the craft beer on his lips. Someone had a sample, I teased when we broke apart. Did I get the right one? It's perfect, thank you. He smiled. Why does it feel like longer than 3 weeks since the last time I saw you? I was thinking the same during the drive, I confessed. New Orleans seems like it was a year ago, not a month. Lucas glanced down at the floor between us for a moment before meeting my eyes again. How are you doing with everything? He wasn't talking about business at my flower shop or life with my pack of ghosts. There was a deeper specificity to his question, one I wasn't interested in discussing, at least not tonight. I smiled. Things are good. I should have given you a heads up about the gang tagging along. I guess I was kind of hoping they'd take a hint and slip out mid-tour. Lucas furrowed his brows as a slow smile tugged at his lips. Really, Scar? I might not be able to hear them, but even I know there's no way they'd leave voluntarily. I cringed. He was right, of course. The trio wasn't exactly known for being respectful of our privacy. Now, with Lucas permanently stationed in Seattle, we'd need to establish some ground rules. Whether the ghosts agreed to them or not was a separate battle. It's been hard for me to say no to them since we got back from New Orleans, I told him. I guess I still feel a little guilty over the way I treated them before leaving for the trip, especially when we both would have been in real trouble had they not come to the rescue. Lucas gave an understanding smile and brushed a loose strand of my copper-colored hair out of my face. Fair enough. I'd probably still be sitting in a jail cell if it hadn't been for them, and you. And now look at you, I said, gesturing at the large living space. Living like a king. He laughed and captured one of my hands. You should see my new office. Maybe next visit you can meet me there. Deal. Now let's talk about these dinner reservations you made. How fancy do I need to get? We were celebrating, his new job, his new condo, and his permanent move to Seattle. He'd made reservations as soon as he'd moved in and received his hire-on bonus with the international security firm. I wasn't sure of the dollar amount, but judging on the rental they'd put him up in, the company wasn't hurting for cash and was generous to its employees. 45 minutes later, I was sufficiently dressed up enough to fit the dress code standards of the high-end restaurant Lucas had selected. He wore a three-piece suit and looked darn good doing it. And as we walked to our table, I noticed more than a few pairs of female eyes turned toward him. I smiled to myself, thinking of Gwen's reaction if she'd stuck around long enough to see us leave for dinner. We were seated, and within a few minutes we'd ordered a bottle of wine and a round of appetizers. The prices on the menu made my eyes bug out, but I held my tongue. It was Lucas's night, and this was how he wanted to celebrate. I'd grown up with money. Extravagant dinners were nothing new to me. I had a handle on which fork to use for which course, and knew the difference between a palate-cleansing sorbet and a true dessert by the time I was 4. But I'd left that life behind, much to my parents' chagrin, and rarely dipped a toe in the 24-karat gold swimming pool of the rich and famous. As we waited for our entrees, we nibbled on fondue and considered the interior of the restaurant. It was a beautiful building, and everything from the linens to the art to the furnishings had been carefully selected to create an elegant, almost old-world atmosphere. "So you've told me the office is cool. What about the people, your team?" I asked, pouring myself a little more wine. "It's different," he said, giving a nod when I hovered the bottle over the rim of his glass. "I'm not used to working in an office or keeping regular hours. It's a lot of meetings and collaboration, which is nice, but I'm adjusting to not being the lead." He chuckled. That sounded more arrogant than I intended. I shook my head and set the wine aside after topping off Lucas's glass. "I don't think it's arrogance. You're used to boots on the ground, giving the orders and keeping everyone on track. Sitting in a boardroom making plans for things happening half a world away is a huge shift." He raised his glass. "It is." "You'll adjust," I told him, smiling over the rim of my own glass. "I have no doubt." "Well, I get my first taste of fieldwork here in a few weeks." My eyebrows lifted. "I've received my first international assignment," he said. "To Spain. I'll be gone for 3 weeks." My heart sank. I'd known travel was part of the job requirements, but hadn't expected it to come so soon or to last for so long. We'd spent our entire relationship living long distance. He'd spent more time in Beechwood Harbor with me, but only for a few weeks here and there in between filming assignments for the reality TV show he'd worked on. I couldn't say why this new development was different than the past, but it tugged on some new thread of emotion, and I had to work to force a smile. "That sounds exciting. Spain is lovely." He went into some of the details, and I did my best to listen and keep my smile in place. But something a few tables down drew my attention away. A ghost was hovering over a diner, a malicious gleam in her haunted eyes. The ghost, a female, who looked to have passed away while still in her teen years, dipped her silvery, semi-transparent hands into the middle-aged woman who was enjoying a chocolate tart. The woman sat up a little, her shoulders lifted. The teenage ghost cackled and touched the woman again. My eyes narrowed. "Scarlett," Lucas said, concern in his voice. "Is something wrong?" I'm sorry," I said, tearing my attention away from the ghost. "I thought I saw someone I went to school with, but I was wrong." I reached for my wine glass. "You were saying?" Just that I'm looking forward to—" I signaled for a passing server. "Scarlett, what's going on?" Lucas asked, leaning forward. "I'm sorry. It's just there's something of a situation over there at that table." The server stopped at the table and I asked for a salt shaker. They weren't readily available on the table, and my small clutch wasn't large enough for the small iron omelet pan I usually carted around in case of ghost misbehavior. The servant masked a strange look and hurried off to find me one. "What are you going to do with a salt shaker?" Lucas asked. "Scare off that ghost over there before it goes any further. I don't know if they know how to possess someone, but if they don't already, they're about 3 seconds away from figuring it out." The server was nowhere to be seen, and the ghost was dipping her hands back into the woman. I jolted to my feet. Lucas swore quietly. I marched across the dining room, eyes boring into the teenager's silver-hued profile. I cleared my throat, and the two diners, as well as the ghost, turned to look at me. The teenage ghost reared back as she met my eyes and realized I was glaring at her instead of blankly looking past her. "Can we help you?" the man asked, giving me a suspicious frown. I narrowed my eyes at the ghost, before rearranging my face into a polite smile for the man and his wife. "I'm terribly sorry to interrupt. I thought you looked familiar, but it appears I was mistaken. Enjoy your meal." "Oh, well, thank you," the man said. I turned and stalked back to my table with Lucas. "You can see me?" the ghost hissed, right on my heels. "How? Who are you? What's your name?" I ignored the ghost's questions, happy to have distracted her from the unsuspecting couple in time. The server reappeared at the table and held out a silver salt shaker. I quickly took it and gripped it in one hand, concealing it from the ghost behind me. "Is there anything else, ma'am?" the server asked, a wariness in her eyes. "Your entree should be here shortly." "Thank you. This should do it," I told her, retaking my seat calmly. The teen swooped closer. "Hey, I'm talking to you. What are you? How can you see me?" Under the table, I shook salt into my open palm, collecting a small pile as quickly as possible. When I didn't answer, the ghost shifted her attention to Lucas. He's yummy." She reached for his hand resting on the table. "I wonder what it would feel like to touch him." "Leave us alone," I hissed, hurling the salt in the ghost's face. She shrieked, and then growled, before dispersing into a cloud of silver that faded away like an early morning cloud. Lucas blinked. "Scarlet." "Sorry," I said, setting the salt shaker aside. "Just doing a little pest control." He glanced around. "It's all clear. Problem solved," I said, brushing my hands together to get rid of the excess salt. "Now, have I ever told you about the cafe I waitressed at in Barcelona?" Chapter 2. "Lizzie, can you get me the bucket of pink carnations from the cooler?" "Sure," my assistant chirped from the front of the flower shop. Moments later, the cheerful blonde appeared at my side and placed a 5-gallon bucket of cherry blossom pink flowers at my feet. "This looks great so far," she said, studying the large funeral wreath I was crafting. "Thanks," I said, tucking another piece of boxwood into the squishy block of floral foam that formed the ring. With a quick sideways glance, I plucked a full carnation from the bucket, placed it in the arrangement, and then glanced up to identify the other sparse spots. I should have finished it yesterday. "It's all right," Lizzie said. "You're almost done, and the service is still a few hours away. Plenty of time." Lizzie's boundless optimism was one of the qualities I'd grown to love over the past several months, since hiring her on as a part-time assistant at my flower shop, Lily Pond. When she'd started, she hadn't known the difference between a peony and a petunia, but she'd proved to be a quick study and was capable of most basic design orders on her own. Her early klutzy streak was fading, replaced with an ever-growing confidence in her skills since I'd hired her on full-time. During my time visiting Lucas in New Orleans, I'd had my reservations about leaving the shop in her hands, but found things in perfect order and even received a handful of phone calls from our regular customers to let me know they appreciated her service in my absence. I paused to tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear and glanced at the whiteboard calendar on the wall behind Lizzie. She sidestepped out of my way and gestured at the colorful writing. "These are the only ones left for today. I can finish up while you run this over to the funeral home. We've been pretty dead up front for most of the day. I think a lot of people are down at the beach for the cleanup." "Oh, you're probably right. I hadn't even thought about that." I blew out a puff of air. Sheesh, this day is really getting away from me. The kids were back in school, and tourist season, along with wedding season, was officially done for another year. To celebrate another successful busy season, the town's Chamber of Commerce had pulled together a potluck-style barbecue on the beach, weather permitting, and had invited all local vendors and their families to come celebrate. Taking advantage of the gathering, the mayor decided to host an all-day town beautification event preceding it. Tourist season was great for the town's businesses, but wreaked havoc on the beach and streets as people poured into town. Beechwood Harbor was a small town, but a popular stop for fellow Washingtonians, as well as people from all across the country, some of whom were not as eco-minded as others. To counteract the damage, City Council arranged discount booklets featuring coupons to local companies to be handed out to those participating in the cleanup projects all around town and down on the beach itself. I donated several hanging baskets to one of the local clubs, and had struck a deal with a local nursery to deliver a truckload of leftover annuals directly to the town's senior center. The mayor gifted me a coupon book in exchange for my help, assuaging my guilt over not being able to comb the beach for trash on the final day of the town beautification. "Are you going to the barbecue tonight?" Lizzie asked. I nodded and placed a few more carnations. "I was planning on swinging by. You?" She hesitated, and I glanced up. Lizzie's cheeks had gone pink, and she was chewing her lower lip. "I'm not sure." "Oh, come on, it'll be fun. You play a little beach volleyball, dance, mingle, have some spiked punch." Flapjack chuckled from his place on my work table. "As I recall, Scar, the last time you went to a barbecue, you didn't do any of that. You stuffed yourself with an impressive amount of potato salad, fell asleep on a picnic blanket, and woke up with a nasty sunburn." I scowled at him. "Mrs. Garland makes a prize-worthy potato salad, and you're just jealous you can't have any." Realizing I'd said the quiet part out loud, I winced and peeked over at Lizzie. "I mean, you'd be jealous if you didn't get any. So you might want to get there early." "Nice save," Flapjack purred, his wheezy version of a laugh catching in his throat. "Well, actually, someone asked me to go to the barbecue, but I'm not sure if it's a date or if it's just an as friends kind of thing." Lizzie paused, wringing her hands together. "So I wasn't sure I'd go at all. The whole thing is making me nervous." I smiled, resisting the urge to pounce on her. "Who asked you?" Lizzie had been woefully single since I'd met her, and while we'd never talked too much about her past, I'd gathered a fair dose of heartbreak resided somewhere in the not-too-distant rear view. Hayward, who'd been hanging out in the shop most of the day, shifted uncomfortably and rose from his seat. "Come along, Flapjack. I believe I know girl talk when I hear it. Perhaps we gentlemen should scurry along." "Scurry along?" Flapjack snorted. "That's rich, coming from the guy who reads Cosmo over Lizzie's shoulder." Hayward bristled, his bristle-brush mustache twitching. "That's preposterous." Flapjack smiled like the Cheshire. "In any case," Hayward bumped him with a quick elbow, "we should go. Gwen will be at the beach by now, waiting for us to join her." "Fine." Flapjack glared up at Hayward but got to his feet, his feather duster tail swirling like a boat propeller. "I was going anyway," he said casually. "They'll start grilling the fish soon." With that, he winked out of sight, off to wander the beach and breathe in the scent of the fresh-caught fish. A ghost's life didn't have many pleasures. Flapjack's revolved around sarcasm and the smell of fish. Hayward righted his top hat and vanished. "Do you know Bryant Lewis?" Lizzie asked, drawing my attention back to her date or not a date quandary. "He's a checker over at Hank's Hardware." "Oh, a checker. That's a stable future," Flapjack's disembodied voice called. I bit down on the insides of my cheeks to keep from barking his name. I'd make the little furball pay later. He was lucky Lizzie couldn't hear him. "I think I've talked to him before," I said. "Sandy brown hair. Looks like he played football in high school." Lizzie blushed. Clearly, she'd admired his squared shoulders a time or two. I smiled. "You should go. Even if it's not a date, you'll have a good time and make all the other single ladies jealous." I winked and brushed my hands off on my apron. A month had passed since my last manicure. though I'd never gotten around to fully taking off the remaining polish. I silently noted it was time for a return to the town's day spa and wondered if there was a coupon in the booklet from the mayor. Now that I'd be seeing Lucas a lot more often, I needed to start scheduling regular manicures. Not for him, per se. Lucas might wear a suit for his new job and live in a fancy high-rise, but at heart, he was a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy. He drove a truck, hated frou-frou coffee, and probably hadn't even noticed the manicure I'd had done before visiting him in the Big Easy. Despite his no-frills preference, there were bound to be company parties, corporate functions, and dinner parties in our future as he settled into his new job. Green nails and tattered cuticles simply wouldn't do. I should probably get a few more dresses and purses, too. Gwen would be delighted to help. She inhaled fashion magazines like oxygen and spent the majority of her time haunting, literally, the town beauty parlor. If I told her I needed a wardrobe update, she'd no doubt have 10 suggestions at the tips of her fingers. "All right," I said, carefully lifting the large and heavy arrangement from my workstation. "I'm going to take everything over to the funeral home. If it's still dead once you finish those last few orders, go ahead and lock up early and head to the barbecue. I'll see you and Bryant down there." Lizzie flushed again and scurried to prop open the back door for me. Within 10 minutes, I had the arrangements loaded into the Lily Pond delivery van and was backing out of the shop's designated parking space. Beechwood Harbor was a small town, the kind of place where the shops were named after their owner or their owner's parents who'd originally opened the place. There was one market, one coffee house, a handful of restaurants, and a few motels and bed and breakfasts. I drove down Main Street through town and within minutes pulled into the lot beside the funeral home. As the town's sole flower shop, Lily Pond did a lot of business with the funeral home, and no one was surprised to see me when I backed through the glass side door, arms wrapped around a large hurricane vase. The flowers obscured my face, but a passing employee greeted me by name all the same. "Need some help?" Garth asked, after we exchanged pleasantries. "Maybe with the wreath. I'll be right back up for it." "Sure thing, Scarlett." "Thanks." I knew the place like the back of my hand. Not hard to do, considering its size, and quickly made my way to the small viewing room, where memorial services were often held. There were 2 churches in town, but the smaller or non-religious services tended to be held right at the funeral home. It was one of the town's historic homes that now housed small businesses. In the funeral home's case, almost everything in the interior remained original to the home, with only some minor updating to modern codes. Services were held in the former living room, a large space with polished wood floors, a large fireplace, and built-in shelving along one wall. It was always set up and ready for a service, with rows of folding wooden chairs, a thick carpet down the aisle, a pulpit at the front that blocked part of the fireplace from view, and a few tables for flowers. The service tonight was a memorial service and wouldn't have a casket, so I designed a large wreath of flowers that would hang from an easel beside a blown-up portrait of the deceased. The large hurricane vase in my arms went on the table beside the urn, just as I'd discussed with the family when they'd come for their consultation. The funeral home had several package options available for those who didn't want one more decision to make. But oftentimes, families wanted to meet with me and discuss the arrangements ahead of time. The woman being memorialized the following day had been young at the time of her death, only 46. She'd left behind both her parents, along with a brother, and perhaps most tragically, a teenage daughter. The arrangement shifted slightly, and I paused to maneuver some of the blooms back into their rightful places. "This is all for me?" I turned, startled by the voice, and found a ghost standing in the doorway of the viewing room, her mouth agape, silvery eyes wide. Crap. Had she seen me? Did she know I'd heard her? Without a word, I did a dramatic stretch, pressing my palms into my sides and arching backward, trying to convince the ghost I'd had some kind of muscle spasm. What can I say? Desperate times? Pathetic measures. The ghost watched me, but I avoided meeting her gaze head-on and went back to arranging the flowers. If she didn't know I'd heard her, then she wouldn't know I could see her, and she'd leave me alone. And, above all, I could make...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?